Okay, can you see
Okay,
it?
yeah, now it's on again.
Okay, I think I just went on the wrong one. All right, let me just enlarge this. I hope not it go. Can you see?
Yeah.
Great. Let's start then. On the scientific investigation, I really want to emphasize again, when we are looking at dependent and independent, we must take it from the aim. I think that is clear to everyone, but the learner still struggling on this one. And then if we ask validity or reliability, they must refer to, if they refer to repeat, they must say repeat more than once, or use more than 5 slices of bread. So in this case, we have 5 slices of bread. So the reliability will be use more than 5 slices, not just use more samples or something like that. And remember, when we have validity, it must be the same amount of tap water, the same amount of bread slices, the same species. We must use those words when we do that. And then also a conclusion. A conclusion is an answer on my aim. And that answer I get out of my results. So I just want to emphasize that. The rest are coming along very good. Learners don't struggle a lot on this one, but we must emphasize, remember in paper 1 and in paper 2, scientific investigations will be there. Determine the dependent, determine the independent. There's always a question on that one. So if we go to the question of the code of life, it is important that learners must know what is the function of the DNA. What is the function of DNA? It contains our genes, and it contains the code for protein synthesis. That is very important. But then DNA have a specific role in transcription. What is the role in transcription? Then we must focus on the fact that one string of DNA molecule acts as a template on which a complementary mRNA is formed. And then it is carried, okay, yeah, that is the main things of the DNA role in transcription. So please focus on that one. Then the differences between DNA and RNA. Remember, we can ask it 2 ways, either structural differences of DNA and RNA or differences of the monomers. Now, this is important. What is important here? Most of the time, learners get it right. But when they present their answer, they only say deoxyriboses, or they say and riboses, and they will not allocate a mark. They must say sugar is deoxyriboses and sugar is riboses. The same of the nitrogen base. They can not only write thymine and uracil, they must say nitrogenous base thymine and nitrogenous base uracil. They cannot just say thymine and uracil. And when we ask monomers, then it is only applicable on the sugar and only applicable on the nitrogenous base. So this is very important to note. DNA replication, when in the cell does this take place? Interphase, where in the cell does this take place? In the nucleus. How DNA replication takes place, I will come to it now. What is the significance of DNA replication is important because we make an exact copy of the mother's DNA so that the offsprings have the same copy of the mother. So if we look at DNA replication, very important, those are the keywords that must be there. Learners only write the DNA unwinds. That is wrong. It must be the double helix DNA. Not only the double helix, not only DNA, not only the helix DNA, it must be double helix DNA. To form 2 separate strands, both strands act as a template. And then the other one here, they only refer to using 3 DNA nucleotides. They only say they use 3 nucleotides. They did not mention DNA. So that is very important. And look at the last one. So it seems straightforward, but learners don't write two identical DNA molecules. They just wrote and results in two DNA strands. Two DNA strands is a whole different thing than two identical DNA molecules. And our level 7 learners loses the marks here, a lot of them. And then therefore they have 5 out of 6. They don't say two identical DNA molecules. So please emphasize that one. Transcription, very important always. I know we ask translation in the March test, so definitely now it will be transcription. So again, let us focus on.
Excuse Cecilia, your screen does not show again. We cannot see the presentation again. SM, your hand is up. Is there a problem?
I don't know what is the problem. Let's share. And now, can you see it?
Yeah. It is on now.
Okay. Yeah, now it's on.
Can you just check, Cecilia, that questions will be asked at the end? I see hands up already. Colleagues?
Okay, let us ask. We will see. Please make a note of all the questions. I will address it at the end, okay?
All right.
Okay. I wonder why did it, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So in transcription also, let us focus on this highlighted areas that the learners must mention these keywords. They leave it out, and as I said earlier, that this is very important. This is very, very important to look at these words, and transcription is very important as we ask translation in March test. All right, let's look at translation. I will come to translation when I do mutations, because translation and mutations go hand in hand. All right. Very important is to identify. Now, for some of us, this comes straightforward, but especially for our level 1s, to 3s, they struggle to identify where is the sugar, and they struggle to identify where is the phosphate. Now, the phosphate is between the two sugars, and the sugar will always contain the nitrogenous base. And then on some reason, they get confused about hydrogen bonds and peptide bonds. So in this case, this is the hydrogen bond. That is very important. How many nucleotides are there in this diagram? There's one nucleotide. There's another nucleotide. There's another nucleotide, and there's another nucleotide. So it's important that the learners can see this. So there's 4 nucleotides. In this diagram, if you look at
what you are talking about.
Say again.
We can't see what you are talking about. We can't see what you are talking about.
Riak, is my screen visible?
The screen is visible.
Yes, I can see loud and clear.
Your screen is on
I don't
transcription.
know.
Okay. All right. So then, if we look at this diagram, again, if they indicate this one as a C and they ask what is W, we can't say it's a nitrogen base. Then we must indicate that it is guanine. It is very important then to indicate guanine, not just a nitrogen base. If I ask what is, for example, what is this one, this label, and there's no indication of a nitrogen base, then it's a straightforward, it's nitrogenous bases. Ne? So please emphasize that to our learners, that they must be able to identify. If I give this one a C, then they must say it is guanine. Or for example, if I say A and T, then the sequence will be T and A, like that. So especially level 1 to 3 learners struggle with that one. So definitely a nucleotide or nucleoacids, a DNA structure will, or RNA structure will be given, and they must give the labels. So that is low-hanging fruit mark allocation. Learners must have full marks in this one. All right. So if we look at the next diagram, there's another example that we can do with our learners, which will be very good to do with the learners. I want you to focus on this question. Name 2 organelles where we found DNA. Now remember, DNA is found in the nucleus and in the mitochondria and in the chloroplast. But in this case, we refer to a human cell. Therefore, we cannot mention chloroplast. And for some reason, learners does not know this. Learners does not know where can we found DNA molecules. They don't know how to answer that one. All right. So you can always look at these bubbles here, these blue bubbles, especially on yesterday's question paper also. Those NB is NB. All right. Protein synthesis, it is very important that learners can identify the DNA molecule because it's helix. To identify the mRNA because it's a single strand. That is very important. To identify this structure. Now, this structure is your tRNA molecule. And your tRNA, at the end of your tRNA, it's the anticodon. And on the tRNA, that one is the amino acid. That one is the amino acid. So usually the tRNA have a folded structure or a clover structure or whatever. This is your tRNA. This one will be your anticodon. And then on the top, it will bring a specific amino acids. Now, what is the binding between the 2 amino acids? That is your peptide binding, and the peptide binding is between 2 amino acids. Very, very important to remember that. All right. If we look at this one again, the DNA helix, this one is the DNA because it's double. This one is the mRNA. Also, that is very important here. Nolita, can you see the red marks that I make?
No, I see the circling that we have done in the arrow.
Okay, so, but, okay, and now the red. So what is very important in the mRNA also? How many codons does this mRNA have? These 1, 2, 3. So please indicate to them that each 3 nitrogenous bases forms 1 codon. So this specific strand has 3 codons. So how many amino acids will it code for? 3. 1, 2, 3. They will code for 3 codons. Very, very, very important to know that. So again, there's my tRNA molecule. There is my anticodon. And when these amino acids bind with one another, that is a peptide binding. So in protein synthesis, we must look at labeling the different parts. Okay. Right. So if we look, there's the questions again, and there's answers. You can go through these answers. It's very important. I want to focus on this question. A sample of DNA was analyzed and 28% of the nucleotides contains thymine. So look at this one. Look at the answer of question 2.2.3. So they want to calculate what is the percentage of cytosine. So if we say there's 28% thymine, then there's also 28% adenine. That gives me a total of 5-6%. 5-6 minus 100 gives me 44%. Divided by 2, that gives me 22% for guanine and 22% for cytosine. Very important question. Make sure learners understand that one. All right. Then this question 2.2.4, describe how a DNA mutation will affect the structure of a protein. In this question is general, but they must be able to apply these steps into any example. So if there's a DNA mutation, then the sequence of the nitrogenous bases on the DNA will change. They must name it. Then they must name the change. We will do an example therefore. So this is a general answer, but they must apply this to a example. This would cause corresponding change in the mRNA codons, and a different amino acid will be brought by the tRNA that lead to the change in the sequence of the amino acid. Therefore, the protein will, a different protein will form. But we will do that one in application of a example. This is very, very, very important. Mutations, 5 marks in the question paper. All right, so you can look at those questions. Again, just to emphasize, learners struggle with this type of questions. So there is my mRNA strand. How many codons? 3. How many amino acids? 3. All right, and then learners must read carefully. Write down the complementary base sequence of the DNA strand that forms codon 1. So there's codon 1. So the complementary DNA will be A will bind, U will bind at A will bind at T, and C will bind at G. So also a very good example to go through with the learners. And as I stated, learners does not read which codons and on which strand, and they struggle to go from a codon to an anticodon or from an anticodon to a DNA base sequence. There's an example. This is a very good example to do in terms of writing protein synthesis or answering the questions on protein synthesis. And it is important to note that they give us the DNA sequence, but the table that they give us is codon. So that is your mRNA. And learners does not know this. It's like maths. They must practice these questions. They can't see this question for the first time in the exam paper. So please, this is very, very important examples to go through with the learners to explain to them how we answer these questions. Okay, so the answers are on the right-hand side of the slide. I want to focus on question 3.2.4, where we explain what happens when there is a mutation, and therefore it is allocated in red. So that number 4 is NB. So explain what will happen if base triplet 1, so base triplet 1 is in the pink, highlighted in the pink. If ATG is changed to ATA, what will happen then according to the steps of translation? So first of all, the first one is the DNA changed from ATG to ATA. Then it is very important to say, therefore, the codon, you must say the codon on the mRNA, not only the codon, not only the mRNA. The codon on the mRNA will then change, and then they must also include the change that is happening. All right? In this case, the same amino acid will bind, the same one, because UAU, if you follow the purple or the pink highlight, will bind the same amino acid, and that is many times a very important point where they catch the learners out. Learners think every time there's a mutation, there's a new protein. It's not always the same. And now the most important thing is the fact that learners will say the sequence of the amino acids will change. Some of the learners say that if the codon on the mRNA changes, the anticodon on the tRNA will change. That is wrong. That is wrong. What will change is that the tRNA will pick up a different or the same amino acid. Therefore, the sequence of the amino acids, will change or stay the same, and therefore the same protein will form. So this, for level 7 learners, this is difficult. Therefore, please take time and demonstrate this to them. The DNA change, then the codon on the mRNA change, and then the tRNA will either pick up the same or a different amino acid. Then the sequence of the amino acids will either stay the same or the sequence will change. Therefore, a new or a same protein will form. Very, very important for the June exams. All right. There's another example where you can do with your learners to demonstrate mutations, writing down of codons, writing down of anticodons. Please emphasize this to all the learners, and see the highlights is to demonstrate which amino acid pairs with which DNA base triplet. All right. That is DNA and DNA protein synthesis. DNA profiling, again, and the learners struggle with this. They can identify, in all the instances, they can identify the suspect of or the father. But then when they come to the answer, we struggle to get 3 out of 3 or 2 out of 2. So what we do, we take the baby DNA profile bars, we compare it with the mother. And those DNA profile bars that we compare with the mother, we eliminate them. Then the remaining bands of the baby, we compare to male 1, male 2, or male 3. So the remaining bands must then correspond to either male 1 or male 2. All right, and in this case, it's fine, it is male 2. That they can answer. They can determine that it is male 2. But when they have to answer this question, then we have problems. So what is the correct way to state the answer? Why is male 2 the father? Give reasons for your answer. The DNA profile bands of the baby that does not match the mother, or the remaining DNA profile bars of the baby that does not match the mother, all, listen to this, all match male 2 DNA bars, DNA profile bars. So I can't tell you how many SMSs I do get in the when we are writing and where teachers ask, can we please, Cecilia, can we please allocate this? We cannot. They must indicate that all or the 4 remaining bands that does not matches the mother matches male 2's DNA profile bars. So the main misconception of common mistakes learners might make is they say the DNA of the baby matches the DNA of the male 2. Wrong. The DNA bands of the baby matches the DNA bands of the male. Wrong. It must be the remaining bars of the DNA profile bands of the baby that does not match the mother, all matches the DNA profile bars of male 2. So I feel like I have explained this 1,000 times, and still when I get the answers of learners and they say no, it's male 2 because the DNA of the baby matches the DNA of male 2, then I know that teacher does not listen, does not attend workshops, does not attend memo discussions, and then I'm very angry because our learners, we drop our learners. All right, but sometimes I can see some learners also does not listen, but a whole class, when a whole class answer it, I know that responsibility is on the teacher. So please let us focus on how we are going to explain DNA profiling. All right. Then I just want to emphasize the other one. What is the other uses of DNA profiling? Very important. We must write full sentence. So the learners out there today that is joining us, listen carefully. Don't write to solve crimes. It's not to solve crimes. The police are there to solve crimes. It is to identify criminals or to investigate crime scenes, to identify organisms for their remains, to identify dead persons or to identify missing persons. It is not to find a missing person. It's not to find relatives. If you want to find your relative, you can call. Hello, where are you? Okay. It is to identify. We must use the word identify. To test the presence of specific alleles that cause genetic disorders. Not to determine genetic disorders. To test for the presence of a specific allele that cause a genetic disorder and to establish matching tissue for organ transplant. Learners just wrote, solve crime scenes, looking for missing persons, organ transplants. Then it's 0 out of 3. And that is heartbroken because they know something, but they don't know the whole story. So let us teach. Precision teaching is important so that the learners can also do this question. All right. And then the other one, why is this DNA profiling unreliable? It can be contaminated. DNA can you can place DNA on a scene. The equipment is not clean. The methods are not in order. The person that do the DNA profiling is not trained, etc. So that is always also a question in DNA profiling. Right, so there's another example how you can determine it and practice this one in the classroom. Very important. You must go and practice this in the classroom. All right, meiosis. Meiosis is the phases. We must be able to identify the phases. This is a lot better than previous years. So we are coming with that. Along with that, then very important, why is meiosis important? What is the significance of meiosis? It produces haploid gametes and it is a halvening effect on the chromosome number. That is the one. And the other one, it introduced genetic variation by crossing over and random arrangement. Don't stop there and say it introduced genetic variation, especially if we ask, explain or describe why is meiosis important, then you must refer to the two processes that causes genetic variation. I didn't make a bubble here, a blue bubble, but there's my bubble, and this question or this part is very important for the test. All right, crossing over, I think we did ask it sometimes. I just want to emphasize on terminology that we use. We must say that homologous chromosomes forms a bivalent, or they came together. That is very important. And non-sister chromatids overlap, and the rest is straightforward. So the most common mistake is they say chromosomes come together. It must be homologous chromosomes come together, and non-sister chromatids or adjacent chromatids overlap. That is very, very important. Random arrangement, I'm going to explain it when I do metaphase, this one. I'm going to explain it when we do metaphase. What must we know about chromosomes? I really want us to remember that chromosomes can be haploid or it can be diploid. So diploid chromosomes is usually found in our somatic cells. Haploid chromosomes are found in gametes. Now, the structure of a chromosome. So a chromosome, this is a chromosome. This one on the left-hand side, and this one on the right-hand side is a chromosome. We talk about chromosomes. So although this one is actually a daughter chromosome, we can call it a chromosome. Chromosomes consist usually out of two chromatids bind together with a centromere. But if it is drawn like this, it's also a chromosome. This one is a chromosome. So the only and only and only and only and only and only and only place where we talk about a chromatid is in anaphase 2, when the chromosome, the centromere split. That is the only part where we ever talk about a chromatid, and the other place we talk about a chromatid is when we label a chromosome. So there is no chromatids in telophase. There isn't chromatids, there's chromosomes in telophase, all right? Because that chromatid duplicate and it forms a daughter chromosome. So please, this one is a chromosome, as this one on the right-hand side, that is chromosomes, all right? So there is the metaphase where the chromatids are together, and in anaphase, this is daughter chromosomes. They pull together, but then we call it we call it chromosomes. Forget about daughter chromosomes also. We talk about chromosomes, and the chromosome can be two chromatids and a centromere, or like this one where it's just a I don't know what to call it, a single, I don't want to say chromatid, but this is also called they can draw a chromosome like that also. The differences between mitosis and meiosis, we don't teach this. I know we don't teach this. Learners don't learn it. They think they can just remember. And therefore, I'm asking to please do this in your classroom and when you do revision, the differences between meiosis and mitosis. Let learners at least learn 4 of these differences so that they can give it in a table and look at the differences between, there's a difference between meiosis, the process meiosis and the process mitosis. And then there's also a difference between meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. So it's not rocket science to learn the differences between these two, but learners must do it. It's like learning transcription, translation, and DNA replication. They must go and learn the difference between meiosis and mitosis, and the difference between meiosis and 1 and meiosis 2. So the reason for this one is in the next diagram. That is just another diagram to explain it. What is chromosomes and what is homologous chromosomes. I remember this question was also in the March test, if I'm correctly. And this is again, it's an NB again. So remember that this is homologous chromosomes. Looks like this, but remember homologous chromosome can now look like this also. If I do my drawing correctly, this is 2 homologous chromosomes staying together. Because I didn't draw, it's 2 daughter chromosomes, but we talk about chromosomes. So these 2 structures can also be homologous. And why? Not according to my diagram, it's just a rough. The shape is the same. The size is the same. The position of the genes is the same. The gene coding for same characteristics. The location of the centromere, at least this was correctly in my diagram. NB, what is homologous chromosomes? All right. So the difference between meiosis in metaphase and in anaphase. What is the difference? And learners get confused on this. In anaphase, we talk about chromosome pairs separated. In anaphase 2, we talk about chromatids that moves to opposite poles. Anaphase 1, a whole chromosome. And I think this was in the practical. We asked a question like this in the practical. And we ask, I can't remember in the test. No, we didn't ask this one in the test, but in the practical, we ask it. And I recall now that many of these questions in the mass test and questions in the practicals, the 2 practicals that I did, repeat themselves in the June paper. That is why feedback is very important when you give the feedback or you give the SBA task back to the learners. If we look at metaphase, in metaphase 1 and meiosis, we must also remember that in metaphase 1, homologous chromosomes align themselves on the equator in pairs. So there's my equator. So homologous chromosome pairs align on the equator in pairs. The learners must not write homologous chromosome pairs. Pairs must not come in there because that means that this homologous pairs, for example, this is pair 1 arranged there, pair 2 arranged there, etc. If we say homologous chromosome pairs align on the equator, that means that the pair coming from the mother and the father arrange. But if we say homologous chromosomes arrange on the equator in pairs, that means that this one and this one can lay together in a pair. But this one comes from chromosome pair 5 and this one comes from chromosome pair 17 or whatever. So there's a difference. There's a fine technical difference between homologous chromosome pairs arranged on the equator and if I say homologous chromosomes arranged in pairs on the equator. So please look where the word pairs are written in this difference.
Excuse me, Cecilia, can you please repeat that?
Okay. If I say homologous chromosome pairs arranged on the equator, then it means that the pair, for example, chromosome pair 1, lies on the equator. For example, if I say, to make it more explainable, if I say, all right, married couples sit together on the equator, that means you and your husband sit together on the equator. Married couples sit, but if I say couples paired on the equator, that means the male from this house and the female from the other house can sit on the equator. So the thing is here, homologous chromosome pairs arranged on the equator. Then it means pair number 1 arranged with one another, pair number 2 arranged with one another. If I say homologous chromosomes arranged in pairs, that means that the chromosome pair of 1 can come there and the chromosome pair of another chromosome pair from number 7 can come together. So it's a very fine distinction on the arrangements of homologous chromosomes. So in short, homologous chromosomes arranged at the equator in pairs. Not homologous chromosome pairs arranged at the equator. Okay. So that is that one. And then learners must be able to label the diagrams. I think that is also more, improve a little bit more in meiosis and mitosis. There's a lot of questions with what they can follow and do. Examples, I'm not going to do the examples. I can do the examples. There's the one on non-disjunction. Non-disjunction was very well answered in the March test, so they can just emphasize on that one. Let's look at genetics. Now, genetics, there's in the June paper, it's going to count a lot of marks. Remember, we don't have evolution, and still the question paper is 150 marks. But as I said, therefore, we have this session where we have emphasized on key points. Okay. The first thing that I want to emphasize is that the biological terms, but as I come to certain examples like dihybrid crossings, I will emphasize on phenotype and genotype and dominant and recessive, and on these biological terms. As we do an example, we can do that. The one that I just want to emphasize is on a gene. A gene is a small portion of the DNA that code for a particular characteristic. This a particular characteristic is a gene. All your characteristics is DNA. A particular is gene. All your DNA, all your characteristics is DNA. So let us just focus on that one. The other one that is very important is genome. A genome is the mapping of the exact position of all your genes on all your chromosomes. It's all your genes on all your chromosomes on the exact position. That is a genome. What is a karyotype? NB, it's the number and shape, arrange. That is your karyotype of all your chromosomes. It's the chromosomes, that is a range according to number and shape. That is a karyotype. So again, NB, these two biological terms and definitions are definitely in the paper. Then we must not forget about multiple alleles. Multiple alleles is NB, and I'm going to tell something when we come to blood groups. I'm going to emphasize this again. So I can ask, or we can ask, give an example of multiple alleles to demonstrate the law of dominance, or use multiple alleles to demonstrate that a gene can have 4 phenotypes or something like that, that is applicable on blood groups. Luckily, it's only blood groups that we have to know. So multiple alleles means two alternative forms. More than two, not two alternative forms. It is more than two alternative forms. That is the correct definition of multiple alleles. Not two alternative forms, more than two alternative forms at the same locus. And I will emphasize this on blood groups again. So don't forget about that. Then our usual, this is a karyotype. Why is this a karyotype? Because chromosomes are arranged according to number, and structure or size are arranged according to that. This is the karyotype. The karyotype that is important for us is position 21 and position 23. That is the gonosome. So if I ask you in this question, what is the phenotype of this chromosome pair 23, then the phenotype of this chromosome pair 23 is a male. How many chromosomes are there? What is the, if this is a human cell, what is the disorder? It's Down syndrome. Straightforward questions. You must be able to identify the autosome and the gonosome. So just straightforward questions on our karyotype. Normal questions. What is this diagram called? It gives the definition of this, of a karyotype, etc. Is this a male or a female? There's a lot of questions that you can do that one. The law of dominance, NB. The law of dominance, NB, especially complete dominance, is NB to explain complete dominance. And please, we must make sure that we use the definitions in the exam guidelines. They redefine this in the exam guidelines. So make sure that learners know the definitions. Okay. Codominance, both alleles are equally dominant. Learners write, both alleles are dominant and equally expressed. That is not true. That is not true. Both alleles are equally dominant and both alleles are expressed in the phenotype in the heterozygous condition. Make sure that we have this, all right? So if I took this cow and I asked what type of dominance is this, then they will indicate it's codominance. And now I want to say, explain this. Please explain this. Then the learner must write that red and white, both red and white alleles are equally dominant and they are both expressed in the phenotype in a heterozygous condition. So they must apply the definition to an example. And then the same with incomplete dominance. Neither one of the alleles is dominant over the other one. Learners wrote, neither one is dominant. Neither one of the alleles is dominant. They don't write it correctly and say, neither one of the alleles are dominant over the other one. And then we results in an intermediate phenotype in a heterozygous condition. Very important to learn this in the correct way. The monohybrid crossing, straightforward. The most important thing is learners put the meiosis and fertilization on the wrong place and the P1 and the F1 at the wrong place. The F1 cannot stand in the middle. They must stand on the bottom after the cross was made. And we must, the format, they must learn the format, and meiosis and fertilization must be on the correct positions to allocate the mark. Suddenly, or not suddenly, the latest trend is they are very strict on the position of the P1 and the F1 and the position of the meiosis and fertilization. Also, when we write the phenotype, there must not be heterozygous or homozygous in the phenotype. They must write out the phenotype, fully out the phenotype. And yeah, so that is most common mistakes. For example, they will say black crosses with white instead of a black rabbit crosses with a white rabbit or something like that, or red cross with white. It must be a red flower is crossed with a white flower. They must, the phenotype, the characteristics must be right in full. All right. The hybrid crossing, NB, and our learners lose marks here. And I always thought that it's easy, but for some reason learners don't read. They don't read, and they don't, I don't know, they don't understand. So there is my characteristics. So there's two characteristics. The one characteristic is on plant height, and the other one is on stem color. So there are 4 alleles. 2 alleles are applicable on height and 2 alleles are applicable on color. So now when we ask, what is the recessive allele for plant height? What is the recessive allele? Allele is a symbol. So that is small letter t. The allele is small letter t. If I ask, what is the recessive phenotype for height, then it is short. It's a short plant. So precision teaching helps the learners to understand when do we ask allele, when do we ask genotype, and when do we ask a gene. So in this case, there are 2 genes, the gene for stem color and the gene for this gene for plant height. But there's 4 alleles that code for this. And then again, please please, please, please look at this one. How to write gametes. How the learners must write gametes. Gametes must be separate from one another. They can even draw circles around the gamete. Please help the learners to write gametes. In remarking this year, you won't believe all those learners that wants to maybe have a distinction or whatever. I think in all 600 scripts, there was 2 learners who wrote gametes correctly. So that is shocking. That is really shocking. So please do this exercise of diabrete crossings with learners and explain the type of question. They must read the question. And many learners, when we ask phenotype, they will say black. It is black fur or long. They must say black fur and long tail. All right. So I hope you will understand what I mean there. I just brought in this type of question. Sometimes they give you a table, and this is a good example. So how many characteristics or how many genes are there? 1, 2, 3, 4 genes. How many characteristics? There is 8 characteristics. How many alleles? You can see the alleles. All right. So now if I look round and winkled. So if I look at the seeds, round and winkled seeds, I can ask what is the dominant phenotype for seed texture? So now one learner tell me it's round because the round is in capital letters, was wrote in capital letters. I think it's just the way they wrote it. It's not because round is in capital letters. It is because when I cross a round and a wrinkled seed with one another, all the offsprings was round. Therefore, round will be your dominant. It's not because they are first, they are in first or they are in capital letters. It is because all the offsprings are round. So if we look at the color of flowers, when I cross a violet with a white color, all the offsprings is violet. Therefore, my violet color will be the dominant color. So please emphasize this to learners. And if I ask, explain why yellow is the dominant seed color, they must say, because when we cross the yellow and the green seed with one another, all the offsprings are yellow. And it is not because they are first or they are in capital letters. That isn't not the correct answer. Also a very good example to go through for preparing learners for the June exam. All right. Then the different laws. Learners doesn't know this one. I will come back to the law of dominance when I'm going to do blood groups. But the principle of segregation, learners doesn't know this one. An organism possesses of 2 factors or 2 alleles which are separated during meiosis, so that each gamete contains only one of these factors. You know, if we have the allele for brown eyes and meiosis take place, the capital letter B will go into one gamete and the small letter B will go into another gamete. Make use of examples to demonstrate the law of Mendel's principle, or the principle of segregation, is very, very important for this. Already talk about blood groups. There's an example of blood groups. That they can go through. Okay. I just want to look for my diagram on blood groups. I hope it's here. Maybe it's on the next slide. I will come back to this one. to this, but it's very important to look at the blood grouping. Pedigree diagrams, maybe I will come back to blood groups at the end. I just want to look at pedigree diagrams. If we look at pedigree diagrams, the normal questions on pedigree diagram, how many generations in this diagram? There are 4 generations. It is important to note that how many offsprings have Joshua and Ronel? Have 2 offsprings. How many males with brown eyes? The males are square and they are grey. So how many males? 1, 2. They must know the difference between males and females. Females are circles, males are square, and they must be able to determine how many offsprings there are. So that is the usual questions that we ask. And then remember, when we do disorders, we don't talk about affected or non-affected. We use the description in the key. Hunter syndrome, or this one is, we're not using affected male and unaffected male anymore. They must refer to the disorder as stated maybe in the passage. Don't use affected and unaffected anymore. So please revise that. So also in a pedigree diagram, they must be able to give the genotypes of the different males or females, like in this diagram where we put in the different genotype in the sex link. They must know how to write it in a sex link. Give it. So, but pedigree diagrams, how many generations, how many males, give the genotype, give the phenotype. Remember the phenotype, they can read from the key. That is important. And then the last important thing on pedigree diagrams, this is another example that they can use, is sex-linked disorders. Why are males more affected than females in whatever? In this case, color blindness. Please, this is NB, and let learners write it in this sequence, in this way. Why are there more males than females? It can be Hunter's disease, it can be color blindness, it can be hemophilia, whatever. And this is how we answer it. It is straight. It's also in how to teach, in all of the how to teach and activities. Males only have 1 X chromosome. This chromosome carries the recessive allele. The male will be colorblind. And you must make this applicable on a or example that they give. If it's not colorblind, they must say that if they have the recessive allele of the Hunter's disease or of the pedidactyl, whatever, they must apply it to the example. Please also facilitate this with your learners. Facilitate this with your learners is very important. Then mutations, just the definitions. I'm going to skip that one for this. Genetic engineering, we asked this one numerous times. You can revise it with your learners. Cloning, always important to show them. Why are we using the nucleus? Why are we removing a diploid cell, etc.? You can just revise this one with them. Stem cells are very important to explain the resources of stem cell. Remember, when we ask stem cell, it is usually in our to demonstrate. It's usually asked where they give an extract and they must answer from the extract. But what is the sources of stem cells is very important. And why can we use stem cells as to cure some diseases or disorders? Remember, stem cell can divide into any other cell. That is very important. I don't see my slide on blood types. Maybe when I revise it, I delete it, but let me explain this to you. Blood groups are very important. Blood groups are very, very, very important. All right. So a blood group, in blood groups, we have one gene, and the gene is blood groups. Blood groups have one gene. All right. And then blood groups have 3 alleles. We have the allele,
Cecilia,
yes.
Cecilia asks, there's a chart that says you are presenting too fast.
Okay.
And they're also asking to go back to the multiple allele story.
Okay, I will.
Yeah,
I'm somewhere now on the multiple alleles. Okay.
Yeah.
So blood group is one gene. I'm going to explain this one very carefully, very slow. I also do it last because it is also the last question on the question paper, and it counts a lot of marks, and we must make sure that our learners understand it. So blood groups is one gene, and the gene is blood groups. But that gene is coded by 3 alleles. The allele, the A allele, the B allele, and the I allele. Okay, so that is the 3 alleles. And these 3 alleles can code for 4 phenotypes. So now the question can be, how can multiple alleles code for 4 phenotypes? So multiple alleles is more than 2 alleles. Now in blood groups, we have more than 2 alleles. We have the blood group IA, IB, and small letter I. That is the 3 alleles. So how can they code for 4 phenotypes? So use multiple alleles to demonstrate the law of dominance using blood types. Or how can blood types be one gene but 4 phenotypes? So the answer can, or the question can be variables, but the answer must be blood groups is one gene. The alleles are 3, and then you mention the alleles. You mention the A allele, the B allele, and the O allele, okay? The next one that we must say is, now we must demonstrate the law of dominance. So we will say the allele, not the blood group A. Blood group A is not dominant over blood group B. The allele for blood group A is dominant, and the allele for blood group B is dominant over the allele for blood group O. That is your next one. Then you emphasize the law of dominance. The allele for blood group A and the allele for blood group B is dominant over the allele for blood group O. Now, blood group A have 2 possible genotypes. Blood group A have 2 possible genotypes, and then the learner will write blood group A is, and then he will say IA, capital letter A, I, capital letter A, or I, capital letter A, and small letter I. That is the 2 genotypes that blood group A have. And then blood group B have 2 genotypes, AB or capital letter B, capital letter B, or capital letter B, small letter I. And then we have the third blood group AB, and I give the alleles or the genotype for blood group AB, and then blood group O can only be 2 recessive alleles. So, questions is, demonstrate the law of dominance using the alleles of blood groups, or demonstrate how multiple alleles can code for 1 gene but 4 phenotypes using blood groups. But at the end, luckily we only do blood groups as multiple alleles. We will start and say blood groups is one gene. It had 3 alleles. The allele for blood group A, the allele for blood group B is dominant over the allele for blood group O. Right? Then the genotype of blood group A can be 2 types. There's 2 different genotypes. It can be homozygous or it can be heterozygous. And the same for blood group B. Blood group AB can be IA, IB, both A and B capital letters. And then the phenotype, the genotype for blood group O will be small letter I, small letter I. Therefore, 1 gene, 3 alleles, 4 phenotypes. And that is how you demonstrate it, and that is how you allocate more. We are going to allocate marks for that. That is on our presentation. That is what we have. I'm just going to stop sharing and also stop
Cecilia?
the recording. Yes.
Cecilia, can you just go back to that allele thing? I just want to say, can you just emphasize again, when we ask an allele of a recessive blood group, we cannot write O.
Yeah.
Because O is not allele, and people must make sure that because I find it now when I do the moderation of the practical, that people mark, if the learner write O, they mark it correct. But that was not what the question is all about. The question is about the genotype, the allele.
Yes.
What is an allele? What is a gene? They must know the difference between the two.
Yes. So the blood group is A, but the alleles for blood group A can be IA, capital letter A, or small letter I, or it can be homozygous or heterozygous. So a blood group is not an allele. An allele can only be those 3 alleles. And the way we are writing the alleles are very, very important. Okay.